It is the Dirty Laundry Game Worn Hockey Podcast. Special guest this evening. A lot of people may or may not know him. He at least now has a rule named after him, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Mike McKenna joins me from St. Louis this evening. Good evening, Mike.
Hey, what's going on? It's nice to hear your voice, Jason. And I'm just hoping that these thunderstorms that are kind of near us in St. Louis right now aren't too loud in the background. Hopefully it skirts us. So
Yeah.
you know how that works, man.
Oh, yeah.
Live podcast recording. Sometimes you get some funny things going on.
And not 30 minutes ago, I had a shower pop up basically over my house. My parents are no more than 5 minutes away. It was sunny at their house. So, yeah, I had lightning and thunder and everything. So, hopefully, we'll make the best of it, get through it. So, you have, and in the video here, you can see a lot of the jerseys that you've collected over your time. Former NHL netminder for anybody that doesn't know, and of course, current Daily Faceoff Analyst. And if you don't follow, either read Mike's stuff on Daily Faceoff, watch the podcast. You've got to do it, especially during the hockey season. I know that you guys are starting to ramp back up. I'm missing those. I mean, listening to them daily. You guys do a fantastic job. So yes, definitely go check out Daily Faceoff. So you played for 15 different organizations and 22 teams. How does that feel? Now that it's all past you.
It's really hard to fathom that. I mean, we date back to junior hockey where I really didn't even have dreams of going anywhere besides college. That was kind of what I thought my end game would be. I didn't think that the NHL or pro hockey was really on my radar. I thought that was, maybe in the distant future, a potential chance of maybe playing pro a little. And just kind of snowballed. And it's funny how my career worked. I never expected it, but I'm proud of it. And in all those teams and all those years, I was only traded twice, and they were really late in my career. It was year 12 and year 14. So, when you look at it from that perspective, I think it tells a little bit of a different tale than all the different teams. Realistically, I didn't sign an entry level contract, so I wasn't a team's prospect. And I turned into the 1 year layover guy as a number 3 goalie and made the most of it, pretty much signing nothing but 1 year contracts all along the way.
Drafted by Nashville, that jersey hanging just over your shoulder there.
Pretty one.
Yeah, the beautiful mustard. I do love that logo, though. That logo, I think, is one of the best ones I've seen in a long time.
The logo was cool. The mustard yellow jersey is terrible, but it's my draft jersey, and so it means a lot to me. And that's a cool one because they didn't have a name bar for me. I went 172nd overall in the 6th round of 2002. And that's pretty common. Late picks typically don't have a name bar for their jersey. Well, I got 9 or 10 years later after the draft, and, I'm looking at this jersey and it doesn't have a name on it. It says 02. And so, I knew a few people. I made a couple calls, and I'm really thankful that Pete Rogers, the equipment manager of the Nashville Predators, was able to put together basically some scraps that were left over from those jerseys to be able to fashion up a name bar. I was pretty lucky. It was almost too late, but he made one of those, sent it to me, and then had a friend put it on. And now it finally felt complete when I did that.
As somebody that's been around the league, I mean, I know you've made friends with equipment guys all over. They hang on to that stuff forever and do some of the craziest fixes or patch jobs. I mean, those are I think, besides the players, the hardest working guys in the league.
Listen, the amount of work that the equipment managers put in, and athletic trainers too. I mean, especially when you think about the minor leagues. Okay, and the NHL, pretty much focus on your job. It's still a lot of hours. It's not easy. You have to unload the airplane, the bus, get ready for the next night. That's all very real. But in the minors, it's really a lot of times a one-man band, and the hours involved are just crazy. And for them to be able to kind of keep stock of what they have in terms of just little padding pieces and jerseys and sticks, and it's pretty unbelievable the organizational skills that these equipment managers have. And when something goes wrong, just how quickly they can come up with a solution.
Yeah, and listen to the podcast you did during the playoffs with I think it was Vasilevsky had the issues with his skates, the zip tie fix, and some other things, and you broke all that down because you've dealt with those things and been right in the middle of it.
I've had toe laces break on my pads in games, and it typically takes an equipment manager who has had something happen before for me to learn something. Okay. So like I had a toe lace break, and man, John Krause in Portland that year just zip tied that sucker right on, and if you actually would have tried to fix the pad, it would have taken forever. And I might've had to come out of the game. And, if you're looking for a quick fix, you pull out a couple zip ties, put them on, and you fix the thing right in between periods. So that was one of them. And then I had another instance where I never even had thought about washing my goalie gloves. And we all think about how hard the gloves get. And why that happens is because all the salt in your sweat just sits in the glove. It's full of salt. That's why they get so hard and crunchy and gross. And I had an equipment manager in Lowell with the Devils organization named Paul Bistan who said, "Hey, let's wash these things." What? I hadn't even dawned on me. And he chucked them right in the wash machine, and they came out and they were better than new because it got rid of all the salt. They were soft, they were supple, they felt amazing. And it was just kind of a good lesson. Like, we don't have any natural materials in gloves anymore. It's all synthetics. So, and think about how wet you get them on the ice. They're soaked when they come off. It's
Oh
not
yeah.
going to hurt them. Throw them in a wash machine. And that's something I try to pass along to kids and parents is you can wash your equipment, like all of it. Okay. I don't know about washing skates. I don't know how you'll do that one, but aside from the skates, you can wash just about everything
But at
else.
least pull the beds and stuff out and dry that stuff just so you
Yeah.
don't eat up the rivets or anything. But yeah, people don't think and they chuck it, and maybe once a year, oh, I'll hose it off outside or something. So with these racks of jerseys and all the time you spent in the league, when did you decide you wanted to start collecting your jerseys?
I don't think it was ever a conscious decision that I wanted to. It was more or less, why am I not getting these jerseys? That always stuck with me. Like, you work your ass off to wear this jersey for an organization and a city and fans. And like, I'm sorry, but these jerseys mean more to us on that we've worn than a collector. Okay. Like, it's just a reality. Like, these jerseys mean a lot to me, man. Like, this is my life. This is my story.
Sure.
And it just never felt right to me that the team just takes them and sells them. And the only caveat to that is that I just couldn't understand, especially AHL, NHL teams. They go through 4, 6, 8 jerseys at the NHL level. Set one aside for the player. And as you know, Jason, I think I beat that drum loud enough because in whether it was the last CBA, they reworked the CBA coming out of COVID, but previous to that, the last time the CBA was agreed upon, there's a Mike McKenna rule now. And that's basically that every player gets to keep a jersey. And man, that makes sense, because think about it, like, even like e-bugs get a jersey, like emergency backups get a
Right, but
jersey.
yeah, because everybody feels they're so special, but you're just as special too because
Yeah.
you've made it to that level.
Yeah, we've worn it and gotten paid to do it. And like and it's different from some sports, like you'll get requests for an autographed jersey. And it's like, dude, I don't get those. You know what I mean? Like, can you get us a game used jersey? No, I didn't used to be able to do that. And they didn't just give them to us like a lot of people thought. And I don't know if that's a difference in sports. I don't know if baseball, they get to keep I don't know how that works for other ones.
And I'm wondering, and you may know this just because you talk to some of the guys, some of the bigger name guys, I think probably have that built into their contract where they get spares to do that with. But yeah, you're right. I actually went and read the CBA last night. It just says 2 jerseys during the season, doesn't specify anything other than that. And I think every team's a little bit different on how they do it. And you've had some teams that did give them to you, which is at least worked out.
Yeah, I've got Dallas right here. Dallas gave me a jersey. I mean, there's been a handful of them for sure that did, but I've bought jerseys at the end of the year. I mean, I remember being in Binghamton and I had to pay $200 for my own jersey, and a couple other cities that was the same way. That didn't really sit right with me at all either, considering the dollar figure. But when you think of, like I said, just the sheer quantity of jerseys that are used and what they mean to us, it means a lot. And I did have a couple teams give them to us, but that typically happened when I finished a season with a team. And if you didn't finish a year with a team in the NHL, you weren't going to get a jersey. And so like my Columbus jersey and other cities, they were just kind of Vancouver. I dressed 2 games for Vancouver, and we can't, that jersey is a great white whale, but basically the guys who really, really would have appreciated these jerseys, some of these call-ups, there's call-ups that'll get 1 or 2 games in the NHL and they'll never play again. And they're the ones that aren't getting a jersey. versus a player that finishes the year that plays 10 years in the league and they get 10 different jerseys. You really should have taken care of those guys who were call-ups. And that's what that rule, I think, really, kind of accomplished.
And I hope that they're fulfilling that. And we run into a lot from the collector side of things. We are not all of us, but a good portion of us are very purists. We don't a lot of times don't want them signed because they weren't signed on the ice when the guys used them and that. But there are guys out there that if they pick up, be it a Blues jersey, be it Dallas, whoever, and they want to strip it and put a bigger name on it, sometimes they're stripping those call-up guys or the guys that maybe only had a handful of games. And then we don't know down the road if the guy's looking, we don't know if the jersey was destroyed and you may just never find it. And it's unfortunate that, yeah, those should be just going to those guys. And I don't know if you were in the loop on it, just for being in St. Louis, July of last year, the Blues opened up all their rando drawers and put 700 jerseys out for sale for their summer sale at $100 a piece. And, wow. And some of the names I saw flying out of there were back to 2000, 2001. And some of those were cup of coffee type of guys. And then there were some other bigger name goalies and different things like that. But it's like, yeah, those guys should have gotten those even back then.
And honestly, man, why weren't those players contacted? And I love the Blues. I think that's a great organization. I love ownership there. I think management's done a great job. But you think back to it, like, try to give it to the player first. Maybe they did, for all we know. But it's just surprising. Really, it's not something I would have ever expected when I turned professional, that the jersey that you wear, that you just work your ass off for, you bleed and you sweat in, like it's just essentially the team can just sell it,
and big events in them. Even in your cases, I see your Tampa jersey in the rack there, as you were, I think that's the one you got the shutout in, and you were the number one star. I mean, those kind of things, those are your career milestones.
Yeah. I mean, and they mean something, this is what you had on in that moment. And, if you look around my room, I've got all my masks, which are the thing that, I got to take with me as a goaltender. And those are outstanding. I mean, I would never want to get rid of a mask. I've had people ask what it would take, and it used to be an Audi R8. Now it's turned into an Acura NSX. And I'm actually not even sure if I would really willingly make that trade. You know what I mean?
We'll see if you get any calls after this podcast about that, because some people are diehard for masks for sure. But no, having the opportunity to hold those and in my hand and look at them close. I mean, every one of those is artwork for sure.
Yeah. And they're just personal. You've done a lot of things in them. And I tried to keep, I kept a couple of sets of gear that meant a lot to me. And I've got some sticks here and there, but really it was jerseys and masks were the two things that I really clued in on, that I wanted to have. I mean, these jerseys are going to be my daughter's someday. And to me, that's really special, that they could still, kind of have that part of my career someday that they thankfully did get to see, at the very end of it.
And unfortunately, I got to see you wear a lot of jerseys right at the end of it too.
Yeah. Last year I had 5 teams, so they got plenty of them.
Now, have you met other either AHL, East Coast, or NHL guys that are big with collecting their jerseys as well? I know there's a handful of them out there, but none of us as collectors truly know if there's a lot of guys that really want them.
Interestingly enough, I haven't really had that discussion with a lot of guys. I think a lot of them have the same type of feeling I did, like, why am I not getting these? Or it's appreciated when you get one at the end of the season. But I do know, I mean, just from watching and being in people's houses and stuff, like, players frame jerseys and put them up. I mean, I lived in Nick Cousins' house when I played for Belleville briefly, and he had several of his jerseys in the basement up on the walls. And there's probably more out there than I realized, but I never really connected with anyone that I think, kind of went to the lengths that I mean, I played for so many teams, like, it turned into a bit of a seek and find. And Jason, thankfully, you have very much helped me repatriate some of these as well. You and Dan Day in Norfolk, Virginia. Like, I'm very grateful that have 2 of you guys as friends that, kind of helped me curate my own my own collection.
Sure. And honestly, it was a win-win, because luckily enough, I'm also a full right goalie, not near the level you are, but it was a nice way to trade off gear for jerseys. And again, to get me a chance to play in NHL quality gear and get you back the things that meant most to you. And,
Yeah,
and
and I'm
we've,
happy
we've
to
done a
make
lot
that
of
trade.
deals over the years.
Yeah, but I'm happy to make those trades. Like the equipment is like, unless it's a really special set, like the equipment's kind of just the equipment, and I kept my college sets. I kept my first NHL set, the last set I played in a pro, and I think there were one or two more there. I kept the set that I played in Dallas in because it was the sickest setup
Oh
I
God,
had
that's
ever.
that digiprint was beautiful.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll tell you a cool story actually. Like, I had a set of Digiprint Bowers made up for me to finish my career in the Philadelphia organization that were black, orange, and white, and they were unbelievable looking, but they arrived on the last day, the last game of the season. I'm like, I can't put these on for my last game of my career. I can't do it. I just couldn't do it. And I didn't have the guts to do it, even though I've worn gear out of the box before. And so I just said, you know what, you guys can keep them here. Right. I figured the team paid for them. So I'm like,
Sure.
they're yours. Well, I go back to playing an alumni game last year around Thanksgiving time, something like that in Philadelphia. And I just got in contact with my old trainer. I was like, hey, you don't happen to still have those around, do you? Yeah, we do. They still had that set of gear.
I wonder why. And I know a lot of times they either will sell them in their store, put them online, whatever. They end up somewhere. But that's interesting that they just hung on to them.
For whatever, maybe they got stored away. Who knows? I don't know the answer, but I do know that when I showed up in Philadelphia, I got to wear that gear. I got to bring that gear home. And now that's what I play in when I play goaltenders, Philadelphia Flyers colored gear. That's essentially brand new. Like, it's sick. It's awesome.
Carb set.
It looks great. And man, it's all pro quality. It's all the things that I love. And realistically, I probably play 3 or 4 times a year. It'll probably last me like damn near the rest of my life unless I like blow up and wait, or like, just can't do it anymore or something. It should hold me through, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the quality of that. And you can see over my shoulder, it's a little hard to see in my picture, but I have your, Senator set behind me that they put the tape all over when you ended up coming up, and it's crazy to see. Like, when I sent you pictures that I happened to pick that up, you were surprised that it even still existed.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, I beat the shit out of those too. Like, those pads actually, the pad actually had broken at the boot break, which was wild. I had a puck go through it, and this was kind of when that series of Bauer was still a little bit new, but it shouldn't have happened. It was a big surprise. And I'm just really thankful that Derek Settlemeyer, Nasty in Philadelphia, who was our equipment manager there, like, I showed up from Ottawa and man, I would have looked terrible. And he went right to it with the pad wrap. And
they added about 10 pounds to that gear though.
That's the thing, is that I was glad that I looked good. I kind of looked like an orange road cone actually. And I had black tape on my mask, but it was heavy and it didn't slide very well. And I played a game in that against Capitals, and I can remember just thinking, like, I feel sluggish and I'm not sliding. And like, you don't want to make excuses, and I'm sure that's not the reason, why we lost the game, but it's noticeable.
Sure. And when you're dialed in, I mean, when you're dialed in and your gear is the way you want it, and something's changed, you're right. It's going to throw you. I mean, you're the pro, I'm the beer league guy, but I noticed that too. If my pads aren't rotating or something, yeah, you just feel off and can't do it quite right. And when you've got tape all over that, I mean, and there's a lot of tape on I own the pads and the stuff, and you got to see it not long ago. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, it was hefty. Yeah. I mean, big thing for me, I always knew skates, man. I could tell you the side of the line that the equipment manager sharpened the skate on, or if it was on the line. I use a 3/8 sharpening, and if it was a little sharp, I knew immediately. I was that in tune with my gear that even the slightest, I mean, it could be a 16th or a 32nd off, and I knew it right away. And and that's not to say I couldn't like play through it, but that would kind of, when I'd go to a new team or new equipment manager, that at least would be an initial talking point, was that, hey, like, I can tell that you probably sharpen a little bit on the left side of the line compared to the middle of it. And if you could just be on the line for me, and like, I'm sure that probably comes across as being a little like, finicky and everything, but dude, that's what I want. And that's what they're paid to do. And, and usually, like, if you're really, I was just upfront about it, I'm like, hey, I just need this to be a little bit I would say looser in a racing term. I just needed to
Mhm.
be a
Yep.
little bit, a little bit flatter cut for me. And then you know what? One or two sharpenings later, we'd be good to go. And
Like in
that's
racing, you were dialed in.
I didn't want to be loose. I didn't want to be tight. I wanted to be a happy medium. And that was the thing. Like communication was really important because as long as you were just, just kind of honest with them and hash things out early, man, I like to think that I was pretty smooth sailing. I wasn't very high maintenance because I actually I did a lot of stuff on my gear myself once it was there. The only thing I needed was to make sure I got the gear.
That
And that
always
was
the
only,
important step.
yeah. And I had one team that just, you know, they bought me one pair of gloves that went through February and
Oh, jeez.
my hands were absolutely beat to shit. And I thought I was going to break fingers for sure. And they just straight up refused to pay for another set that was sitting at the factory at Bauer. And
That's crazy.
yeah, and that was a time where there was a team that was really pinching pennies. And back in the early 2010s, late 2000s, equipment managers would get bonuses for staying underneath certain dollar figures. You know what I mean? Basically, the cheaper they were, the more money they made, right? Or staying under
Jeez.
budget was a really important thing. And like that was a really bad deal for players and goalies because you had equipment guys that were just doing everything they could to just be cheapskates and save a buck. When in reality, the players really needed gear, and it should have been something that teams were, willing to invest in. And nowadays, it's carte blanche. You get
Oh,
whatever you
yeah.
need, which is nice.
And you've told stories to me, and I've heard it in my other podcasts. Again, talking about gear is how you showed Marty Brodeur your stuff when you were in Jersey, and how impressed he was with it.
It's insane to think that. And I would love to ask Marty this if he even remembers it or if it actually did influence him. But here's what I can tell you. It's 2010. I'm called up to the Devils because Marty's hurt. And he still doesn't have knee lifts on his pads at that point.
Wow.
Like they were old school Sherwoods, no knee lift. Like they were ancient pads. And I remember him coming over and looking because mine had good sized knee lifts. I had them square so they'd sit right in the middle. Like I patterned mine off of J.S. Shiger's. And I remember being in the locker room with him when he was rehabbing and coming back and just talking about, the knee lifts and what they did and how it wasn't just a cheater to stop pucks. Like it was functional. It helped your body. It helped rotate the pad, all these things. Well, sure as shit, he had knee lifts on his pads the next year,
It
and
had to
like,
make you feel good.
yeah. And he had him on his pad. Actually, by the time he was rehabbing, he got a pair with him. And so like, again, maybe that was in the works way before me for all I know, but it was a conversation we had. And there is a little part of me that really wants to believe, okay, this is like Santa Claus, dude. Like I want to believe that I influenced Marty Brodeur somehow. Who knows? But boy, that would be
I
cool,
would think
like,
so. I would agree with that because he'd have
yeah.
probably
And
stuck with what he knew.
yeah. And so it's funny. Like I see Marty occasionally. He's actually lives in St. Louis, a lot of the time. And I've never had the nuts to ask him that question.
Maybe you and I will be in an event here in about 3 weeks. Maybe we'll get lucky and show up and dig that out of him then.
If he's there, it's one of those things that, he's not a guy who's ever done a lot of media since he retired or podcasts or things, but boy, I just think it would be unbelievable to talk gear with him, and not
Yeah.
even worry about like his career speaks for itself. But man, he hung on till the bitter end with a lot of his gear, but he really modernized in the last couple of years. And it would just be fascinating to me to talk to him about that progression and how he finally got comfortable with some of the more modern stuff.
Well, and just seeing how far you're from when you started the gear from the beginning to the end of your career has changed. It's
Oh yeah.
crazy the weight difference and the style difference.
It's it's unbelievable to think that, when I started college hockey, even in junior hockey at one college hockey, I was wearing a 37 plus 1 inch pad because the pads would just squish down on the boot break. The boot break was really deep and the pads kind of molded to your legs. And by the time I finished my career, I think I was in a 33-inch knee, which was 4 inches lower by the standard. I didn't change size wise, but the pads sat that much higher on your legs because of how they were built. And, I was a 35.35-inch pad, I believe was my max, I want to say. And that's not a big pad, compared to
Oh,
what I played with, but the way that they fit and worked, it was fine. It would cover up the 5-hole. So, you just went from basically deer hair stuffed pads and, uh, more or less modified catcher's mitts to, by the end of my career, being space age materials technology, going from early in a career wanting to try to kill rebounds to wanting rebounds to fly off the pads and get away from everybody.
And boy, does that new stuff do that, because say,
Yeah,
I'm lucky enough to be wearing your Vegas set, and man, yeah, those rebounds rocket off those.
yeah, it
It
kicks
sure
them
has helped
out.
me being old, fat, and slow. So
Yeah, well, I wanted that way early. I was one of the first guys, like me and Lundqvist and a couple of Corey Crawford was another one, that we wanted to get the puck as far away from us as we could, as fast as possible, because we didn't want it to sit 10 feet off our pads for somebody to pick it up on a rebound
sure.
or on a rush a chance. I wanted it to go either to the half wall or to the corner, or get past that first forechecker faster than they could get it on their stick.
And I still think you're one of the guys that I think still really has led the NHL, or at least Bauer, saying, "Hey, change this or modify this." Do you think as many guys like you really push modifications? I mean, just hearing your past stuff and other discussions on gear, you really seem to always be on the leading edge of that.
Well, I was a huge gear nerd, like the biggest. And so, I mean, that's why I was a goalie, but I mean, I grew up in a family of tinkerers. I grew up in a family with racing, and you always were messing with your equipment to try to make it better. And so that was me. And, were there things that Bauer did that were stuff I talked about? I like to think so. Like right now, they've got a knee block on the pad. That's, I believe, it's called a Stabilis slide, I want to say. And I can't remember if that's proper or not, but essentially the knee lift on the pad is a form-fitted piece of the pad. It's not just sewn onto it anymore. And man, I was saying that clear back with the Peoria Rivermen in 2012, 13. I have pictures of me saying that this needs to be stiffer. This needs to be one piece. This needs to come out and not rotate at all. And well, it took, you know, almost
Sure.
a decade, like 7 or 8 years, but eventually that happened. So I think the companies really, they take feedback often. It's one thing that I wish I could have done. I would have loved to have gone to the factory and just been in on the process, because I thought I had a lot of valuable ideas. And some of those were utilized, but um, it really takes, it kind of takes something revolutionary to really get it to stick. Like the professor strap is something that's on pads now. It's
Sure.
kind of above the calf. Well, that was Ben Scribbins, and that really was his thing. And, my gift to the game was, putting a couple snaps on my Lundqvist loop so that I could put my socks through those and I wouldn't need tape to keep them down. That was
Just
one
a
of the
little
things that
thing
I
that
had.
you think of. Yeah, it annoys you. Wait, can we do this? And there you
Yeah.
go.
Because I didn't want to use any tape. I hated using tape. I didn't want any part of that. And if I could find a solution to not have to, I did it. And that part was great. So that was one gift. Another gift was just, how to learn how to use the boards to figure out RVH for a goalie. I figured that out in like 2013, right? And now it's commonplace. But I didn't know anybody that did it. I just did that one day. Was I the first to ever do it? Man, maybe not. But I sure had videos out within the year that were showing it. So that's another one that I kind of like to I like to take a little credit for.
Hopefully you can hang your hat on that as well.
Yeah.
So going back to the jersey side of things a little bit, what is your current jersey count?
Oh, that's a great question. My jersey, I mean, I can do it right now, but my own jerseys from, let's just go from juniors on up. So I'm at 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. It looks like I've got 30 jerseys. And I think
That's
that's probably accurate.
minus Vancouver.
Yeah, that's the one I'm missing. That's the only NHL team I don't have a jersey from. So
And you and you beat the drum way more than I have even, but I've reached out to different people. And we know it's in somebody's collection, but they've
mhm.
never even reached out to confirm that, which is it drives me a little nuts, because like at least pop up and say, yes, I have it, but I'm sorry, I just don't want to move it for whatever reason.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like I have no problem paying for them. I really, I don't think it's right of the person to charge more than really what they paid for it, unless you're going to like slap an inflation fee on it. If you bought it
Sure.
5 years ago, you make it $20 more or something. I don't know. to me, somebody out there has what I considered my possession, even though it wasn't, and something that really matters, because I dressed 2 games for that team. It's the biggest oddball part of my career that I'd love to have
Oh yeah.
something from it. Like I have a t-shirt, great. I have some skate guards, great. But that jersey is really cool. And so that's the one that I don't have, that I just love to have it. Like, and I sent the guy a message on Facebook, and I think I know who it is. I never heard anything back. I was as cordial as could be, just saying, I'd really like to have it. I'd gladly pay shipping, whatever you need. It's just, these are me for my daughter someday,
And
I
they're
never heard
both
anything back.
big into hockey too, which is, I mean,
Yeah.
they got to watch you finish your career, but they're also now both playing, which is really cool. And I
Yeah.
know it makes you feel good.
Yeah. I mean, I just want them to be happy, but it is cool to have that bond. And so yeah, that's the one jersey. The other one is that I actually know there's a fan in Allentown that has the jersey that I played my last pro game in. And I think she bought it at the auction that night.
Mhm.
And man, I'd really like to have that jersey, but I just haven't. I don't know, man. Like she really loves having it too. And that one's really hard for me. I mean, I've got a Phantoms jersey, and it's came across my mind. It's like, man, I'd kind of like to trade her these jerseys. Maybe she'd do it, but I haven't broached the subject yet. It's because those are kind of like the 2 jerseys I'd like, that white Vancouver, and then the one that I played my last pro game in. And
No, and I get
and
that
I think that
completely.
last pro game one, I could get that one and make it happen. It's just right now I don't really feel right about it, because she's so kind, and she messages occasionally on Twitter and things, and it almost feels like I'd like her to have some more time with it. You know what I
Nope, I
mean?
get it.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, you and I made deals, heck, a handful of months ago. You were here in Springfield for the Junior Blues alumni game, and you walked into the room for the entire display of all the stuff I had on the mannequins and everything else, and you left with some of them because there was
Yeah.
ones that you needed. And again, we made deals, and like I've always said, and we luck out too, because Philly, you wore, I think there were 6 or 8 that they
Yeah.
made in that, and in Ottawa, and some of the others you worn multiple, so it's easy to still keep some from that team and still make the deals. But like we've said, and even talked over the years, it means more to you, and that's where I'm happy that they are.
Yeah. There's enough to go around, really. Like
Sure.
you've got an unbelievable collection, and it just, walking into the Nelson Center in Springfield and seeing that collection of my gear kind of makes you emotional, man, to just think about, just kind of how everybody's along for the ride sometimes. It's like, I mean, I've known you for a long time, but like, people are vested in your career, man,
Oh,
you know, and
and
you kind of forget that sometimes. And when something cool like that happens, or a memory comes up, or somebody sends you a picture on social media, like, I know there's people out there who just, I hate social media, but I hate to say it, man, I love social media. Like I think it's fun. And occasionally something like that happens. It just makes me smile. And it just kind of brings value to my life, remembering what was an unbelievable piece of it that I never expected to happen.
and I think I've told the story to you, and if I haven't, I'll share it for everybody else too. Is back when, and everybody knows, and I know you've dealt with them too, Mike. Migray.
Mm-hmm.
Migray had the Devils contract the year you were with the organization. Of course, followed social media, followed your stuff, and I know you even got in trouble for it, but tweeted out the fact that you were getting called up. I immediately reached out to Migray, knowing they had the Devils contract, and said, I want his jersey. And I think it was right around the time that we found out that you were going to be playing in St. Louis,
Mm-hmm.
making your debut with them and playing in your hometown. So I reached out to Barry over at Migray and said, I want to get it. Picked it up. Got, I think it was late in the season, or before it season
There
ended.
it is.
Reached out to you and said, hey. And part of it that, and I know you collected them in that, but part of it too is the night that you were playing, the St. Louis radio broadcast had your dad on the air, and he was in tears. I don't think he could hardly get through the interview, talking about how proud he was of you, how amazing it was to see you in the NHL, see you in your hometown playing, and got it. And then I reached out to you. I think it was late. I think you were still playing, because I sent off some
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and I think you were shocked that it was even available already. And you made a deal with sending me a set of the Devils pads, and those things were just sharp as hell.
Those are
But
good.
but I know just in the interaction even then is how excited you were, especially to have that one, knowing you had worn it in St. Louis, and the red one that's
Mhm.
hanging behind me is just one of the preseason ones. But again, I didn't care when it was worn. I'd rather you have the important ones, and I at least have one.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's kind of the same as, something that Syracuse Crunch did for every player was give them a jersey that was theirs. But they weren't game used, and so like I really appreciated having a jersey, but that's one that we swapped out. I mean,
Sure.
that was used in Calder Cup finals. That really means a lot, and to me that's a great trade. I didn't get to. I wanted to have the ones that I wore in the most important moments, and that's one of the cool things about with the Texas Stars was they gave us our Calder Cup jersey, one of them at least, and I mean, that's kind of pinnacle career, like
Oh yeah.
a lot of people will think like, oh, it must have been your time in the NHL. And yeah, like my first game there was, it's mind blowing. And every minute I spent in the NHL was, but in terms of like pressure pack situations, going for a championship, I got those opportunities at the American League level. And those were the best moments of my career, like playing for the Calder Cup, two finals in a row, losing in a game 6 and then a game 7 the next year, and playing the best hockey of my life, and just everybody watching, everybody. Were the last games being played on North America. It was June 13th and 14th. The NHL was done. Like, oh, like to just have that jersey means it just means it's so much, man. Like that's what I got to wear at the peak of my career.
And it
You
was
know,
funny because that particular one I had actually only had about 2 weeks. Somebody had reached out a year ago. We're on the fence about selling it, whatever. And she finally reached out again and say, "Hey, I'm getting rid of all my stuff. Do you want it?" I'm like, "Well, of course." And then, yeah, I happened to bring it along, and you were shocked to see it as well.
yeah,
I'm like, "Yep, that's yours. Let's get this done."
it was
But
cool. It was really cool.
it just, as
You know
hobbyists in
what?
general, we love doing this and interacting with the players, but it gives us a connection to whatever league or whatever player we collect, and now it's connected you back to all
Yeah.
that.
And you know what? I just kind of thought of this as kind of one story I can share that was really cool was that um, this particular jersey that I'm holding up is the Omaha Exarban Knights. And this one sat at my gray for the better part of like 3 years. And I'd had my eye on it.
I,
Like
I did as well, and at the time, I just couldn't pick it up.
I knew it was there. And, you know, I played 2 games for that team, 3 games, 2 games. Curtis McElhaney and I were teammates there. It was my second year pro, but like it's a really cool jersey. And I was like, I want it. This is my jersey. I want it. And I remember emailing my gray and just being like, hey, I'd love to have this. Like, I don't know what they had it listed for. But I
Probably,
think
I'm guessing 395 or so. Usually
maybe,
about what they were for those at that time.
but it sat there so long. My grace basically I think they gave it to me for like 175. And I didn't even like try to really negotiate on it. I just said like,
Sure.
I can't, I really can't afford to pay full price. If not, I get it, and they're like, and they were super cool about it. Like, which I didn't expect that. And it's kind of a cool story that, basically they had a jersey that they kind of couldn't get rid of, and it was sitting there, and the player wants it. Well, I'm pretty sure that I got it more or less at cost, which was really cool of them and appreciated.
And I know Barry's good with that, and again, but they want to, at the end of the day, they want to make the player happy or whoever's getting
Yeah.
the jersey, and they're going to work with you. So,
It's a cool jersey too.
oh
That
yeah,
one's really sweet. The logo was really cool there. The Exarban Knights. The team
and how
didn't
much
last
longer
long.
did that team exist? Because I don't think they lasted too much longer after that.
2 or 3 years, and they went to Quad City. Like, Calgary has done a terrible job of putting their affiliate in places. They went from like Lowell, Mass to Omaha to Quad City to Abbotsford to Glens Falls to Stockton, and now they're finally in Calgary. Like, they've struck out countless times with their affiliates and where to place them. Yeah, I don't know
And you wonder who
who's,
in the background thinks these are good ideas. It's like, just get it done and get it here.
I don't know, but it really took the American League going west for teams to be comfortable with, putting their farm club in the same city. And it kind of was led by, Winnipeg did it with the Moose, and the Jets being in the same city. And then you had the Barracuda go into San Jose, and, Ontario is essentially in LA. They practice in the same facility as the Kings. And, it just kind of snowballed like that. And finally now Vancouver is in Abbotsford, where they really belonged for a long time. So, The American League has certainly grown in terms of its expanse and how much it covers the North America, but it's for the better. If you ask me, the players almost across the board, St. Louis is about the only exception, in Syracuse with Tampa. Most teams are within 2 or 3 hour drive of their affiliate, if not
Yeah,
in the same
don't
city or
remind me of the
tri-area.
St. Louis one. I was, and of course you were there for the last season. I was very upset with the move out of Peoria. I still miss that team, and that was a sad ending up there.
That was a tough one because I think that was really a good home for the Blues affiliate. It had been there for, off and on for a long time, dating back to the International Hockey League. And they'd won a Turner Cup as the Blues affiliate. And you'd seen people like Curtis Joseph and Tony Twist and Kelly Chase all come through Peoria. And, I think if you look back on it, I'm just guessing. I mean, St. Louis might want a do-over on that because they've kind of been in an affiliate hell since then. They've
Sure.
bounced around a bunch. But the bottom line is they were bleeding a lot of money there. And they did not have much money at that point. It was a new ownership group that was trying to make it work. So I think they were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And, if they would have known that the team would have taken off the way it has and become, as stable as they are financially now, maybe it would have been different to look back at, but it was just tough because it was a city that had history. We weren't filling the stands by any means. I don't think we were going to. Caterpillar's not in Peoria anymore. Like, it's the American League had outgrown that city, but boy, it was a great affiliate to have for St.
And
Louis.
it's a diehard
2.5
fan
hours
base
from downtown. It was a really good place. It was a great year in my career to be, I'd pop home like,
sure.
once a month or so, every 3 or 4 weeks. Like we'd play a game on Saturday night. We'd just drive home for a day afterwards. It was awesome.
So, ugliest jersey you've worn and ugliest jersey you've ever seen?
They might be the same. They were so ugly. They were awesome. We wore a Hawaiian jersey with the Las Vegas Wranglers. That was atrocious, but in the best way, because that team would do anything with the promos, and I loved it. We had one in Syracuse that had puppies on the front of it.
Like for an adoption thing or something?
Yeah, it was one of those deals, and people always wonder why I enjoyed playing in the minors. That's kind of part of it. You could do fun stuff like that.
Oh, all the sublimation you see now in the minors is insane.
Those jerseys were utterly ridiculous. These Hawaiian ones that we wore, they were terrible, but they were so awesome. Like we had a leprechaun jersey basically in Peoria for St. Patrick's Day. That was,
you saw that one a handful of months ago too, because I luckily stumbled across that, or unluckily.
Yeah. So I mean, we had a couple. I mean, but this mustard yellow one from Nashville, in terms of like serious jerseys, this thing was awful.
Oh yeah, but it's
and
highly
honestly,
collectible, which is even more funny.
Yeah, and honestly, that one over your left shoulder, that Ottawa Senators jersey, that looks like a practice jersey, and they wore that for the better part of 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so happy when they went back to the more classic jerseys that they're in now, with the black and red and the 2D logo, that are so sharp.
Oh yeah,
because that was a leftover Reebok Edge Ottawa Senators jersey that lasted about 10 years longer than it should have when it came out 10 years ago. And it was in that phase where there was like vertical piping. Vertical piping should never be allowed on a hockey jersey.
Agreed.
Ever. My Peoria Riverman jersey has it. I don't like that. It looks okay on that jersey, but the vertical piping sucks. There should always be a stripe on the bottom of the jersey. Otherwise, to me, it looks like a practice jersey.
Sure. And yeah, the other three hanging back there all have them. Ottawa, of
they're
course,
proper jerseys. All three of those are proper jerseys, and ironically, New Jersey is one of them we're talking about.
Yes.
So that's the way it should be.
Sure. Your favorite jersey in your collection?
Oh boy.
And I know that's probably a tough question.
Yeah, my St. Lawrence jersey at college really is pretty special to me, but I have to look around the room here.
At least you've got a nice setup to be able to easily see them too.
I mean, really, my Tampa jersey, that was the first jersey I wore in the NHL. And I think it's because like it was a real moment for me where it all came together. And I remember coming off the ice in Long Island, the first game I ever dressed in the NHL. I got thrown in midway through and I didn't allow any goals in half a game. And I remember coming off the ice under the grandstands and taking the jersey off. And we always put it in a big laundry crate,
Mhm.
one of those big rolling laundry bins. I remember taking it off and just turning it around and looking at the logo and then looking at my name on the back and the logo. And it was kind of like a 5-second pause. And I just went, I did it. I can't, I can't believe this. I did it. And so I think that memory will forever be associated with that one and mean the most from a sentimental reason. Otherwise, shoot, I don't know. I mean, there's some really cool ones, honestly, like that Exurban Night one kind of stands out because it was just so different. The Dallas one, the Texas one, Columbus. I loved Columbus, AHL All-Star, but yeah, I think that Tampa one really takes the cake.
And something because you've had a long career. I know you've worn a lot of the different materials. And matter of fact, when you were with the Rivermen, I think it was when you were with the Rivermen organization initially, or the first or second stint, it all blends together now. Is when the Edge 1.0 jerseys came out, where Reebok premiered those. You were in the Blues training camp and wore one of those because,
That's right.
luckily enough, I own one.
Yep.
But I know they had to switch pretty quick because everybody hated that because it was
terrible,
tight and then held water and everything else.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, I have one of the other ones from that training camp right here, and they were atrocious in terms of like the playability in these jerseys. They held water like crazy. They were form fitting, so they were just super tight, and we looked weird as hell. And the big thing was what really scared me, and this was back when we still had some absolute mutants on the ice trying to fight each other. These guys were getting concussed, and when you fight, you grab onto the front of the jersey. Well, these Edge jerseys were so flexible and so soft and supple that they just gave like crazy. So the fighters were just, swinging for the fences basically with reckless abandon, and guys were getting knocked out. And to me, that's what really scared me about them. As a goalie, they didn't fit at all. They were terrible. They were so tight on my arms.
There's some great pictures. I can't remember who it is. One of the goalies basically biting it right in the middle of the neck and trying to stretch it out. I can't remember which goalie that was, but basically, yeah, just biting on it, trying to stretch the material out. And I don't think those didn't make it. In some cases, I don't think they even made it a full season.
Yeah, they had a 2.0 about midway through, I believe, because I was in Portland that year in the American League, but they kind of reverted back to just your standard material. But I really think that the jerseys, in terms of the quality and gameplay and everything, took a step forward when Adidas started to make them.
I don't disagree with that at all. I was a little skeptical at first.
The Adidas jerseys are phenomenal. I mean, from the ventilation to what they're actually made out of, more of like a dry fit material, better technology, like those are really good jerseys. And you didn't hear any complaints from guys about them. Like those Edge ones, when we put those on, guys were furious. Like, these suck. These are like, they were mad, dude. And the Adidas ones, it was kind of just like, wait, are there like little holes in the jersey? No, like that was the only thing that guys kind of had to complain about, was just they were a little like progressive.
Because some teams like Dallas did the little dots in the numbers, and that's the concern, because I think it's after next season. I've got my date screwed up, I think, but Adidas is going away, and everybody's like, okay, who's now going to be doing these? Which ought to be an interesting to see. And of course, I guess I'll ask you this question leading into it for this coming season. What do you think about the ads on the jerseys?
I just don't care. I mean, the purist in me says I don't like it, but I also want to see revenues as high as they can be, so the players can make, so not just the players, so everybody can make money off this and grow the game. So, I mean, we did it at the minor league level for a long time. I know I can grab one here that's, this was a great one. So this Portland Pirates jersey's got a big McDonald's on it, and this is an Edge jersey, right? It's so soft. This jersey, we're doing an appearance at like the Boys and Girls Club or somewhere, and the kid looks at me and we're talking about healthy eating and stuff. He goes, "Why do you have a McDonald's patch on your jersey if you're talking about healthy eating?"
You got called out.
I go, "It's called sponsorship and capitalism, my friend, and you'll learn about that in school as well." But I'm okay with it. I'm much more comfortable with the ads being on the helmets. I don't mind that for a second.
Sure, and they've made good. I think all the teams have made good revenue with that. I mean, yeah. I own both, and it blends in, so it's not a huge deal. And seeing some of the teams that have already shown what they're getting for next year with those, how it's being done, I'm okay with it. And again, like you said, with the AHL, I mean, the Rivermen had the Caterpillar
Mhm.
patch forever. Other teams, nobody's gone stupid. Everybody thought it was going to immediately run to a European style with stuff everywhere, and you're not going to see that in the AHL or the NHL level.
I mean, I'm looking at my AHL jerseys right now, and here's Omaha Urban Knights, Allegiant Health, Norfolk Admirals, Steel, the chainsaw company.
Hmm.
I don't know why that one's in Norfolk, but it was. Let's see, Binghamton, M&T Bank, Peoria, PNC Bank, Springfield, Mass Mutual. A lot of banks, they really like to put these
They got
puts
big
on,
money to
right?
pay for it.
Portland, On Target, which I believe is another banking institution. Bay State Health, Massachusetts, there's one. Toyota for the Syracuse Crush.
But none of the
Belleville,
patches are
CAA.
none of the patches are huge or gaudy or I think it's all reasonable. So seeing again,
Yeah.
because I've seen the Blues ones a lot, and they've showed them on the different jerseys. The Stiefel logo is what they're using, and it's cut around there or stitched around there, so it's not just a square patch like you see with some
Mhm.
of the minor league stuff. So I think it's fairly clean. The only, and I don't know if you're aware of this, the only thing I question a little bit is the fan jerseys are also going to have those.
Mm.
I,
Well, I mean, if you want a replica, I guess you got to have it on it. So I guess
yeah,
it's I'm fine with it. Again, if it makes more money, I don't want to see us end up being like Europe where you can sell ad space on goalie pads. That would be tough for me. Even though it'd be so easy with the way you can digiprint
oh
goalie
yeah,
pads now, you can put anything on them. But um, I'm okay with it. The purist in me doesn't like it, like everybody else. But it's a real dude. You should see like it's a real revenue stream, man.
yeah.
Like
The hell, I know the helmets were.
it's a high dollar ticket to put your name on one of those jerseys.
Hey, and you know what? And I appreciate the sponsors that do, because that's helping whatever team it is, and after COVID and everything else, we know every team was hurting. So any way
Yep.
you can generate it. Before we wrap up here, do a little bit of as you're getting real thunder in St. Louis, a little bit of the lightning round here. All you have a bunch of questions, just whatever pops in your head first for the answer. So if you could own any other player's jersey, past, current player, who would it be?
Mm. It would have to be really vintage. Boy, it'd be cool to own one of Glenn Hall's St. Louis Blues jerseys. That would be it.
I have seen them, but yeah, they're getting away from anybody that owns one. Good luck. But no,
That would
those
be
old Doreens are beautiful.
that would be pretty incredible.
What team do you wish you could have played for at any level?
Oh, the Blue. I would have loved to have played a game with the Blues, even just dress a game for the Blues. It was great to play in the organization. And, you know, Jake Allen's one of my best friends in hockey. I love the guy. He's a hell of a goaltender. But there were times that year where I was playing better. And if it was a pure competition and there weren't prospects involved, in my eyes, I deserved a call up,
Mhm.
and it never came. But I also understood why. So I think that's the one that even if I could have just taken warmups and dressed a game, it would have
Sure.
really meant a lot.
Well, and being from St. Louis, and I know your background with your grandpa being a ref, your dad being an off ice official, you've spent years at all the
Oh,
different rinks,
tons.
the
Yeah.
Checker Dome and of course Enterprise now.
It's the arena. Yeah, the
Yeah.
arena. That's it.
If you were to ever, while you were still playing, if you decided to switch sports, something else, what would it be?
Sports?
Yeah, if you
Oh
decide,
God.
you know what, I'm done with hockey, but I can go. I've been told I can pick whatever sport I want and go do it. What one would it be?
Oh, I would have bought a go-kart for sure. Give me a trailer and a go-kart. Let me go at it. That would have been it. I love racing. I love, 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 love being in a go-kart, and whether it's at indoor karting or outdoor, that's a passion of mine.
How was a side note thing, because there were races in St. Louis this past weekend? How was the ride around the track? I saw you got to do that.
It was really cool. I had a two-seater ride. My driver was Davey Hamilton, who's an Indy 500 starter for years, and I mean it's over pretty quickly, but it's 2 or 3 laps at Anger, and they run those two-seaters about 3/4 speed, and IndyCar laps at about 180 miles an hour. So
Wow.
if these things are going 150, 60 on a 1.25 mile oval, it gets your attention when you go through the turns.
I'll bet it does. Now, and I also know you're a big fan of wrestling. If you were to
Mhm.
become a wrestler, what would your name be?
Oh, the Manchester Mauler. No, I don't know. I haven't even thought of that. Like, you'd have to actually, like, nobody goes by those kind of goofy names anymore. So you'd have to come up with your own. And I haven't put thought into that. That would be fun to think of something that kind of reflected my personality. Um, but was still fun. So I'm gonna have to think on that one and get back to you. But yeah, the initial answer, the Manchester Mauler, would just be
Hey, you know what? That's not a
funny.
that's a nice late 70s, early 80s name for sure. For
Exactly.
wrestling.
Yeah.
So, Mike, again, thank you for all your time tonight. It's been a lot of fun, and we've covered game worn jerseys, your backstory, all kinds of stuff, and it's always a pleasure. You know, I love talking to you anytime, and
Yeah.
and excited to see you in a couple weeks. Maybe I'm actually skating as a forward. If you're in net, maybe I'll actually have a chance to put a goal in on you. Highly
I think you
doubtful.
will. No, you probably will. Change ups are hard for me to stop. So I appreciate this was fun, man. Like, it's amazing how quick an hour goes by. And you know me, I love talking about the equipment and the jerseys and everything that's the ancillary stuff to a career that's really cool.
Hey,
And
when you get hockey nerds together, we can go for hours.
yeah, and I appreciate everything you've done for me as well. I mean, these
And
jerseys, so many of
you're
them.
the same as all the times you work with me, getting gear and different things, and lucky enough to be full right to get to use it and
That's it.
show up in beer league at least looking sharp, playing sharp. I can't tell you that piece.
As long as you look good, that's what matters.
I will say I got lucky about 6 months ago. My daughter happened to show up. She's like, oh, I'm going to go watch you play. I'm like, okay, you're going to not be impressed. Caught me in a video stacking the pads.
Perfect. That's great.
I don't know how the hell that happened because I'd let in 10 before, but actually got a pad stack and even got to see it in slow motion in the video. So yeah, I can at least say I did that. So
Great. You do that in overtime of an NHL game, you never forget it. I had one of those against the Bruins, and that was I look back on it, man. That's a highlight, right? I look down the ice, and Jamie McKenna is doing the color commentary for TSN, and he's laughing. And I look behind him, and Craig Anderson, who's backing me up that night, he's got his head out, he's laughing, they're loving it. And then we lost the game because I allowed one to Torrey Krug on the back door.
but you know what, you look good, and I know you made both a highlight reel for TSN and the NHL for that week, so that's at least something.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, Mike, thanks again, and I guess I will see you here in a few weeks, sir.
Yes, you will. I can't wait for it. Thanks, Jason.
Yep, good. We'll talk to you soon.